could I start?
Sure, please.
Okay. Well, good evening, Magister and classmates. We are group number 4, and our topic is about which is assessment record. Next, please.
Assessment records.
Next,
Chapter
please.
7 in the book.
First, we have some important definitions. The first is assessment performance. It refers to what students do in response to a specific assessment task. It could be actions or marks in an answer sheet, or samples of writing or speaking, or a combination of this. The other is assessment record. It refers to a verbal description or a score that is assigned to students' performance. In the other is a score. It refers to a report as a number or a letter. Next, please. Okay, there are two types of assessment records. The first is a written or verbal description, and the other is score. So the question here is, when do we need to use each type? So it depends on the intended use of each assessment. So the first is used for taking low-stakes formative decisions. It includes comments and feedback. Well, here we have an example. If a teacher uses a short quiz at the end of a lesson as a way to collect feedback on his or her teaching, as well as to provide feedback to students. So here comments and feedback are really important because it provides many details. For example, from teacher to students, teacher can tell them how well they perform in the specific assessment, and tell them in which part they need to improve. And from students to teacher, it would be useful to make the changes in their teaching. So, and it is important because teacher um, can make the students to learn and reinforce the content and to continue with other lessons. Here, teacher could give the scores for the assessment, but it is only like a general feedback about how well they achieve the learning goal of the lesson. And the other scores is used for taking medium to high stakes summative decisions. So here we have an example, an assessment given at the end of a school year to make decisions about which students will pass on to the next grade. So here we have an assessment to assign a specific grade or mark, and it is for 3 reasons. The first, with this, it's possible to cover a large area of content, and from which we can get enough information from students' performance, and to have a diagnostic feedback on the learning objectives of the whole course. And the other, it's because as we only need to know which students need to pass to the next level, it's not necessary to provide verbal or written feedback. And the other, it's because teachers are required by administrators or regulations from schools or to the Ministerio de Educación to give percentages or grades to all the assessment of the students. Thank you.
Yes.
Next, please.
Good night, everyone. I'm going to talk about quality. Paula Ocampo.
Paula Ocampo. And the previous student, please, I missed her name, the first student.
My name is Ana Guama.
And yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you very
Quality
much.
assessment and arrive and assessment records. We want our assessment records to be consistent across different aspects of the assessment procedure and different assessment tasks. We want to be sure that students' performance will yield essentially the same assessment record irrespective of when, where, or how the assessment is administered. Next, please. Consistency. Consistency is the degree to which a student's performance on different assessments, for example, different administrations, different stacks, and different scores or raters of the same area of language ability yield essentially the same assessment records. It is essential for us to understand that no assessment record, not even if it scores, it's perfectly consistent. This is because in every assessment situation, there are many potential sources of inconsistency. This include difference in the way of assessment is administered, difference in the assessment tasks themselves, also difference in how the students' performance are reported. For example, in assessment of listening, if the tasks are read aloud to a student, different pronunciation of intonation. In order to help assure the consistency of our assessment records, you need to do two things. Identify the specific possible sources of inconsistency for your particular assessment, and two, specify the ways in which you will to try minimize the effects of these sources inconsistencies of your assessment records. Next, thanks.
Thank you, Paula.
Okay, good evening, Professor. My name is Carla Castillo.
Carla Castillo.
So now I am going to talk about how identify the possible source of inconsistency.
Inconsistency.
Consistency. So here we have the way the assessment is administered. Here we need to take into account the teacher. The teachers have to take the assessment at different times for different group of the students, and sometimes there are teachers that create the assessment, or some teachers take the assessment instead of us. Also, we have the across different assessment tags. It means that in assessment we have different types of tasks. For instance, short answers, completion, presentations, or for instance, write an essay. So here we need to take into account that the way of grading may vary. So also we need to take into account the length, or in the language, it means take into account the grammar, the vocabulary, punctuation, spelling, and so on. Also, we have the how teacher scores students' assessment performance. Teacher is influenced by the scores of the students. For example, if Santi is good in speaking, therefore he should be good at writing. But so I don't think about it and I just put him 20, but sometimes it's not the case. So in this case, the teacher is influenced by the student's performance.
The student's performance, yeah.
Yeah. Well, here single tasks are not very consistent. Well, it means that we can assess our students not only but a simple task. So we need to have different assessment tasks in order to know the whole performance of our students, not just for a single task. Next, please. So how to minimize the effects of the source of the inconsistency? First, we need to specify and apply the same procedure for administering the assessment. It means that if I am going to take the exam in this way, try to do it with the other text, or with the other assessment. Next, include the now assessment task. As I said before, we need to include different type of tasks in order to recognize in order to see all the performances of the student. Specify the scoring method for each task. We always have to specify the scoring method and tell to the student how they are going to be evaluated. If brothers score the assessment, develop a clear rating scale. As I said before, another teachers can rate your assessment or your test. So in this case, you need to develop a clear rating scale to help them to rate your test or your exams in the way that you want. And that's all. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Raquel Lopez.
Raquel. Okay, thank you, Raquel.
Okay, I'm going to talk about stating claim 4. And claim 4 includes the following parts. First part is types of assessment records. 2, second part, source of inconsistency in the assessment procedure and assessment task. Third part is different groups of students for whom the assessment is intended. Next, please. Okay, in administrative procedure for assessment task, the assessment tasks place during a classroom period. As a little example, it is given a period speaking activity between 2 students, and then the teacher observing and listening. The teacher calls the first pair of students understand the procedure. The teacher gives the first student a picture of an animal and allows him or her to take half a minute to think about how he or she will describe it. Then the student has 1 minute to describe the animal to his or her partner. After the first student has finished, the teacher follows the same assessment procedure with the second student. While each student is speaking, the teacher scores on the recording form. The teacher also enters notes for feedback on the students speaking on the recording form. At the end of the assessment, the 2 students return to the class. The teacher then calls the next pair of the students for their assessment. Next, please.
Okay, now we are going to review the example. A teacher in a EFL classroom in a primary school needs to develop a classroom-based assessment for his beginning level students. So the purpose of this assessment is to make sure that the students who pass the grade are going to prepare for the next topic. To make sure that for the next topic. In order to do this, the teacher will use the result of this assessment to help his students to improve their pronunciation. And finally, the teacher are going to provide feedback to his students. The assessment will be based on pronunciation, as I said before, and the assessment takes place during a class period. So the teacher calls the first students to explain the activity to make sure that all of the students understand the activity. So the teacher gives the sentences and she will, so the students are going to pronounce it. After the students has finished, the teacher scores his or her performance using a rating scale and enter these scores on the recording form. In these sentences, in in the first sentence of the picture that we are seeing, for example, we have the sign of sing. Is placed in all of the words of the first sentence, which means that the pronunciation was correct.
Was okay.
Yes, was okay. And in this example, the rating scale is given in the four columns to left with the aspect of pronunciation. Finally, we have the feedback. The teacher also entered notes for feedback on the student pronunciation. The feedback in the picture, we have the feedback in the at the end. He says the notes, and it is the feedback that the teacher write for his student. Next, please.
Yeah, good evening, Professor. My name is
Hello.
Edison Saldaña.
Edison Saldaña?
Sí, Saldaña. I am going to talk about the conclusions. Identifying the assessment records that the teachers need in a specific class. This is to make better feedback towards the students. Teachers will give the necessary material and input that the students need to process and respond to tasks which are assessed. The teachers have to take care about how they will assess the students. The teacher explains the assessment at the beginning of the class period, and the assessment is administered to the class as a group with the students working individually. Yeah. The recommendations, okay. Trying to find out the inconsistencies that we could have in the class and solve it. Making sure that the students' performance will yield essentially the same assessment record, and minimizing the effect of those sources which are making inconsistencies in an assessment. And next is the mind map.
There's a mind map. Good. Okay, great. That's mind map can be very useful. Consistency, quality. Good. Very good mind map. Great. Okay, so is that all? Group 4, are you finished with your presentation?
Yes, teacher.
Yes. Just one thing, I'd like to know the speaker before Edison Saldaña. What was her name, please?
Yes, Professor. I am Jocelyn Laglaguena.
Jocelyn. Yes. Yeah. So in this group, we have Carla Castillo, Ana Guaman, yes, Jocelyn Lalaguano, Rachel or Raquel Lopez, Paula Ocampo, Edison Saldaña. Is that okay? 6 people?
Yes, teacher.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you all groups 1 to 4 for participating, doing a good recap of the topics. Well, as you see, the topics are extensive. Some of the concepts are the same, but of course, when you see it from a different point of view, for example, when you think about decisions, well, you make the same considerations, but the steps are the same, no? And so I think it's been very productive that you guys have the way that you have presented this, okay, with examples, with clear explanations. Some of you even have expanded the concepts. Now, we've seen some concepts in class, but we didn't have time to cover other aspects, but tonight you have done that. So I think it's been very productive. No, of course it's much better when you do your own mind maps and you talk and you look for examples. So I'm sure that this is going to help you retain the concepts, well, and of course understand the assessment development, because these 4 claims that we've seen tonight are about assessment development, no, all the process. Okay, well, unfortunately, because of time, we cannot do group 5. It would be too exhausting, and you I guess you have another class. And okay. So group 5, get everything ready for Monday. No, you, as soon as we begin the class, you will be doing your presentations. Okay. And thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Abby, for giving us the sessions today and being a good host.
Okay, Prof.
Great. And so, well, enjoy. No, enjoy. Tomorrow you have the weekend, so I hope you can relax a little bit, and we'll continue this next week. No, more to come next week. So thank you very much, and have a good night.
Thanks, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Prof.
Prof. See you.
Goodbye. See you.